PayPal has been an exceptional stock in the last year. What can we expect to see in the next year coming, i.e. this year? Is this stock currently a buy, sell or hold? In this video, we're going to be trying to find out exactly this. We're going to be looking at their financial data to put it into my system to see what the intrinsic value of this stock is and whether or not you should be selling, buying or holding, of course. So with that being said, let's get straight into this video. So looking here on a year chart, we can see PayPal is up 37.56%. So really good gains for PayPal. However, if we go to a 5-year chart, we can see that we are still massively down from its all-time high in 2021, with a price target being set at $90.31. According to analysts, they are putting this stock currently at a buy. Of course, we do have their financial Q4 report coming out relatively soon. Let's find out when that is. So it is in February on the 4th, 2025. So if you do hold PayPal stock, please do put that in your calendar. It's definitely something to be watching. They are actually expecting a decrease of 25% year over year, and to report an earnings per share of $1.11, which I feel is actually really bearish. If we do actually look on this website, we can see that they have actually beaten their expectations every time, with them estimating around $1.08 and reporting a $1.20, this being a 11% surprise. I think it's fair to say, that it could be the same story again. I do think PayPal could definitely see a surprise return again for investors. So PayPal currently shows a PE ratio of 21 and an earnings per share of 4.18. So it is in very good territories, I would suggest. So what could have an effect on PayPal stock within the next year? Of course, there is the financial performance as their earnings reports come out. There is also macroeconomic conditions such as interest rates, economic slowdowns and inflation. These will all have a negative impact on PayPal if they continue to increase. Competitive landscapes such as rivals and competition from companies like Stripe, Square and Apple Pay could pressure PayPal's market share. There could of course be regulatory and legal challenges for PayPal, with of course the new government coming in. However, I don't think this will be an issue, especially as this government is very pro-crypto. I think it could actually have a positive effect on PayPal, as they do have a crypto buy scheme on their platform. One thing that could definitely grow PayPal stock is a partnership and acquisition with strategic partnerships or acquisitions in areas like cryptocurrencies or AI enhanced PayPal services. Furthermore, broader market trends in the tech sector, including investor appetite for growth stocks versus value stocks, will play a big role. And PayPal's ability to execute stock repurchase programs may boost its stock price. Furthermore, a broad shift to digital payments could definitely see a large boost for PayPal stock as more people start using their products, of course. And if they do manage to see a broad merchant adoption, the growth in PayPal stock would definitely increase as well. So in its Q3 report, PayPal projected a low single-digit percentage growth for Q4 of 2024, which was below analysts' expectations of 5.4% growth. This conservative outlook is a part of the company's strategy to focus on higher margin business areas such as branded checkout, whilst reducing emphasis on lower margin sectors like Braintree. Despite the modest growth, PayPal anticipates adjusted earnings per share growth in the high teens percentage range for the full year of 2024, an increase from its prior forecast of low to mid-teens. Analysts do have mixed expectations, with some putting the earnings per share at $1.10, with others going up to $1.11. So there's not really much difference, but there is a bit of confusion with this stock at the moment, as of course the stock price has had a really good year and earnings are relatively strong. They're not massive, of course, but with PayPal being such a strong company and it's been in the market for many years, it's quite clear that they can't grow exponentially forever. So, and their earnings per share are still really good. It is really interesting to watch, especially as their growth isn't actually that high, but it's still really high for where the company is. So we're now going to look at their financial data, putting it into my system. Quick note to make, this is not quarterly, this is actually yearly for the like of PayPal. Just decided to look at it on a yearly basis because the company is obviously so old now that I feel like looking on a quarterly basis might be a bit pointless. So looking on a broader spectrum on a yearly date here, obviously we haven't got a trailing 12 months for the liquidity rate, but looking at the liquidity rate, we can see a average of around 1.2, 1.25-ish as at the moment we are at 1.5 liquidity ratio, which means that for every dollar of debt in which the company owes, they have at least $1.5 of liquid cash to pay this back in. Furthermore, trend lines are actually only predicting this to just increase as their cash is obviously growing and their debt is relatively stable. So that is a relatively good outlook for PayPal. And now if we look on the retention rate, this is again a really good story for PayPal, with them currently being at, on a trailing 12 months, 14.1%. This is really strong, so that means that the company retains 14.1% of the money in which they earn after taking away all of their costs. Furthermore, trend lines are actually projecting this to increase, with it looking like the revenue and total income and net income are actually starting to somewhat match up. Obviously not really, it's miles away, but it's looking like we're going to see a bit of a bowl effect here, and we are going to see them match up maybe in the next 5 years, but nothing to worry about. And now looking at the free cash flow here, we can see that this is actually really strong. Looking at the free cash flow, of course, not the operating, we can see that year over year we've been relatively stable, with us having a strong increase on the trailing 12 months, hence why we've seen the stock price grow in the last year, of course. Looking at the difference here, is projected to be relatively stable, growing a bit of course, but nothing to worry about here. This actually looks relatively strong. It will be interesting to see if they can actually increase its free cash flow again in 2025. Looking at an exponential chart with a 365-day basis, we can see that, of course, we've had this massive growth, and trend lines are actually projecting this to just increase, but they are just trend lines, of course, you can't go off that too much. If we look at the volume, we have a very similar story. In fact, seeing these going opposite ways is actually really bullish, as volumes decreasing or prices increasing. So really strong for PayPal on this front. So now if we go over to a 91-day, it's basically the exact same story. So again, I would say this looks really bullish at the moment. And now if we take a look at some of the figures for PayPal, we've got a PE ratio of 21.28, a 52-week high of $93 and a low of 55, this being a difference of 37. We actually have a beta rate of 1.44, which is relatively interesting. I would actually say in the case of PayPal, that is actually quite good. And of course, we have a price of $89 at the moment. So now calculating the intrinsic value for PayPal stock, we can see here we have an acceptable buy price on the more bullish formula at $63.9. This obviously pricing in a sell, with the intrinsic value actually being set at 85.21 and the current price obviously being at 89 with a margin of safety of 75. It is of course a sell, which is actually really interesting as this is the bullish formula. When we move over to the bearish formula, we actually get an intrinsic value of $53. With the acceptable margin of safety of 75%, this gives you an acceptable buy price at $39. Of course, pricing in a massive sell again. So it is really interesting. According to this, PayPal stock is currently slightly overvalued for sure. And when we look at Peter Lynch's value, we actually get a result of 0.332, which actually puts us at overvalued again. So according to my system right now, PayPal is definitely overvalued, especially with them having such a low growth rate despite their earnings per share being really strong. I do feel as if we're not going to see much more growth within PayPal stock to justify a current buy. However, let's see what the analysts are saying about PayPal. So the analysts are actually projecting a relatively strong amount of volatility, with a projection over the next 90 days at around a high of 120 and a low of what looks to be about 60. It's clear to see that no one really knows where this stock is going to go. Despite this, we are actually seeing the analysts on the left here, covered by my webcam, putting PayPal in at a buy. This is based off of 45 analysts, which is interesting because that is the opposite of what my system is actually saying currently, with a target price being set at around $95, which is of course what we saw earlier. I think that is relatively fair. However, for me, I wouldn't be putting this at a buy at the moment. I would definitely be putting this at a hold, especially with their Q4 report coming out. If you do want to buy PayPal stock, I would suggest buying it before the earnings report comes out, as I do feel as if it probably will beat expectations, as it tends to always beat the expectations. So if you are actually going to put money into PayPal, I would be putting it in before the earnings report. However, my personal opinion is I would put PayPal currently at a hold. I don't think it's a buy, just purely based off of my system. Might be personal bias, of course, but I don't think it's deserving of a buy currently, with the intrinsic value being on the high end, roughly where the stock is now. And if you're trying to buy in, I don't think it's worth it. Obviously, with the margin of safety, I think it put it at $63 odd. So for me, it's a hold. But if you were actually to put money in right now, it looks to be a relatively decent time for it. Of course, with this being up massively from around September, we are still in a long position with it narrowly avoiding it, but we are roughly looking like we're going to cross over on the MACD trend lines here. So it could definitely be a bad time, as if these trend lines were to match up, it would definitely open a sell position. With this currently being barely above the 50-day moving average, it is all on this earnings report coming up. If it isn't good, then it's definitely not something to be putting money in. But it's hard to say. For me, it's definitely a hold. It could definitely even turn into a sell. But long term, I think PayPal stock, I don't use an ad blocker, but I always get this. For me, I do think PayPal stock is probably a hold at the moment. It could be turning into a sell if the earnings report doesn't match up. However, I do think the earnings report will be good. I think analysts always underestimate PayPal stock. I think we'll narrowly avoid opening into a sell or a short position here. So that concludes my analysis for PayPal stock. I'm going to go back to what I used to do and give it a rating. I would give PayPal a rating of a C right now. I think it is definitely relatively overvalued, but I do think it is still a really strong company. They do of course have issues with their side company, or the acquisition in which they have over Honey, which is facing a lot of issues at the moment, but I don't think they'll have a massive impact on PayPal as a whole. So that concludes my analysis on PayPal. I'm definitely putting this at a hold. So I hope you have enjoyed this video, found it somewhat useful. If you did, please do leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.